Welcome back. Today I've got a game with the Lizard Cult, a faction that's every bit as quirky as it is RNG dependent, and wow, incredible. Despite what you may have heard, I'm actually not very good with the lizards. They've never really been my favorite faction, and this game is part of my continuing effort to improve. Even in a game where no two factions play alike, the Lizard Cult is a bit of an outlier. All of their actions are dependent on their cards and the suit of the outcast, but more on that later. The first thing we want in any good lizard game is 2 clearings with 2 building slots each. Fortunately for me, the winter map is very generous, offering double build slots in the bottom corners as well as along the top row. Since we're clearly going to be in Rabbit, we're going to start in this fox corner down in the bottom left. Now because this Riverfolk player has some pretty spicy cards in his hand, and I lost the last game I played with him, I'm going to cautiously take up his card price of 1 because it'll give me a fox card for this turn. Because of this, I'm able to set up in the 2 clearings I want to be in for the rest of the game. Now, I could have more easily set up in the rabbit clearing next to my fox gardens, but I chose not to. I wanted to avoid getting pinned between the cats and the birds, and by having both of my gardens right next to each other, it makes them kind of more convenient to attack. In a perfect world, I would have been able to score at least 1 card on this first turn, but I'll settle for just being able to stake my claim this early. The Eerie player opens with the exploding bird strategy by going charismatic, recruiting as much as they can, and then turmoiling to despot. It's actually pretty good for me. This means I have to worry about the far less aggressive despot, and with only otters in the game to really leave cardboard around, I don't need to worry about them scoring too many points. With this faction matchup, the board is actually going to get quite cramped pretty quickly, and I don't want to end up in a situation where birds have to kill their way through me to reach anyone else. Cats go with the traditional build over build strategy, choosing to place a recruiter in their keep because they're worried about the otters next door. Otters end up taking a pretty conservative turn, choosing to draw a bunch of cards to fill out their hand and not place a trade post. While it is sorely tempting to buy that Eerie Emigre and make use of one of the most effective cards lizards can craft, I'm once bitten, twice shy, and after losing my last game to much the same behavior, I'm going to play it a little slower this time. While the outcast isn't in our favor, our hand certainly is, and I'm going to use it with full advantage. I'm going to make sure I have 2 gardens in each color, score in both suits, and put as many warriors down as I can to shore up my defenses. Maybe it's not the most exciting turn, but lizards have never really been known for being too explosive. The Lizard God continues to provide, and we not only get some nice crafting, but we also get a dominance card in the suit we want. With both the Fox and Rabbit dominance cards under our control, we can avoid ever being in a situation where we don't have a card to score with so long as we have bird cards in our hand. The Eerie player decides to fully commit to the exploding bird strategy by putting 2 cards into build. Because of where we set up north, however, they currently only have 4 spaces in which to put down roosts without having to fight someone. If we'd chosen to set up in the middle on the left, then they would have had much more space up top to work with, but for probably contesting the cats for rule in order to put down more roosts there. Instead, they get funneled between our gardens and have to make their way towards the cats, where they'll maybe eventually run out of space. The cats get their 3rd recruiter out, setting up a pretty strong area of control on the right side, but they're now running out of space. It's quite understandable then that they put the screws to the otters by trying to take over the clearing they're standing in. A gentle reminder that they should probably consider moving away. Now, I hadn't noticed that the cats had tied the otters for rule, so I thought the otters were in a good position to go for dividends here. This is incorrect. What they do, however, is the right choice. They take advantage of their river mobility and continue stacking up warriors to work with. Intending to drain the deck of its craftable items, they finish their turn by drawing some more cards. Because they've set prices to 1 again, I figure that letting them have a trade post off of me is probably good trade for being able to have saboteurs ready when I need it. In my consummate greed, however, I never actually craft the saboteurs. On our turn, the plan has not changed at all. We want to score as much as we can because it's honestly the only way we're going to compete with the other players. These bird cards get us a couple acolytes, which will be handy later, and with the extra fox cards, we set ourselves up with an impressive 7 warriors, which is going to be really hard for anyone to break through. I choose to discard the mouse cards because I won't have any use for them, and then immediately start considering whether or not I should have kept one so that I could set up a mouse garden and craft that tea. Birds put another few warriors into the otter coffers so that they're able to put a bird card into battle. Since the birds really want as many trade posts in their space as they can get, this is probably a pretty good idea in the long run for them, so long as the otters actually place those trade posts. With this, the birds have exhausted all of their available space for roosts, and on the next turn they're going to have to find someone to kill. My rabbit gardens are an obvious contender here, but they pale in comparison to that Fox workshop down south. In order to find the 2 build sites they need, they're going to have to battle 3 times, and I don't think they're willing to put 3 cards into battle right away, but I have to be prepared for surprises. The good news for cats here is that they apparently happen to have an ambush for their keep, so that probably applies to their workshop as well. Bad news for the birds, but not my problem. What I do have to worry about, however, is that even if they do turmoil here, the birds are still making 4 points a turn if they're left uncontested. Because the lizards don't always have a lot of agency, it's something I have to worry about early, just so I can take advantage if the opportunity does arise. The cats occupy their last build slot with a workshop and end up moving a lot of their warriors up north. Only in hindsight do I realize that this was a veiled threat towards my buildings, because 3 lizards isn't exactly a great defending force for 2 pieces of cardboard. Even if I had recognized this at the time, the best I could have done was convert a couple cats in that mouse clearing, which really wouldn't have prevented anything. On their turn, the otters craft everything they can get away with, but they need to put down trade posts to do so this consumes their entire turn. On my turn, I watch the mouse dominance card fly into the discard, and this is a good opportunity to get that tea-craft set up for myself, while also choking back the birds a little bit more. I convert these 2 defenders so that I can take over this mouse clearing, and I use the dominance card in order to build a mouse garden. Now, it's normally a bad idea to have lone gardens out like this. Losing cards to Fear of the Faithful is quite punishing when cards are your entire action economy. In my case, however, not only did I have this bird ambush, but I knew that if birds wanted to find 2 spaces to build in, they were going to try and fight my rabbit garden. With this mouse garden in the way and their roost still here, it was going to be impossible for them to actually get through to it. I used the saboteurs here to take my rabbit dominance card back, so that I can score in both suits. With my remaining cards, I throw a warrior wherever I feel like it'll be the least convenient for someone, and I reveal my bird ambush for another acolyte. I don't really care whether they know about the bird ambush or not, because I don't think it will change their plans either way. Not only that, but nobody ever actually pays attention to the Lost Souls pile anyway, and I don't think they're going to do it here. The birds end up embracing their pending turmoil and end up taking the wise choice of just defending the roosts they have. If we wanted to take advantage of the turmoil in order to get rid of their roosts and slow their scoring pace, we're going to have to fight through more birds in order to do it now. This, however, is where the cats take their opportunity to try and fight my gardens. Now, while their 6 warriors to my 3 is a solid number for this, the problem is that because my gardens are going to rule, they need to actually battle me on average 3 times in order to actually build anything here. So it's doubly unfortunate for them when they get not only ambushed, but also low rolls as well. Because the table's actually been pretty judicious about buying, and they've put down a number of trade posts, the Riverfolk only have 5 funds on this turn. They're actually quite desperate to draw something craftable to keep their point economy going. Their luck is not holding out, however, because they don't draw a single thing that they can craft for points. In fact, only with the last 2 funds they commit do they actually draw something they can craft, and I end up buying it right out from under them. Here I'm going to engage in the sacred lizard art of table talk. Lizards as a faction generally don't have a lot of power to influence the board unless the board allows them to influence it. Thus, it's worthwhile to make sure that you're at least coercing your opponents in any ways you can manage. Right now, the table is actually decently even. Between myself, otters, and birds, we're not too far apart. And while I am about to score 7 points on this turn, birds are going to score 4 points on this and every other turn until someone actually deals with it. And even though it's a bit disingenuous to coerce people to police the second place person, it is true that if the birds do get out ahead, I'm probably going to struggle to stop them by myself. Now, one of the chief drawbacks of this kind of table talk is people trying to counter the arguments you're trying to make. But I'm also the type of person who, if I'm going to take the piss, I won't tell you it's raining. In this case, the otter player, who knows that they're currently behind, wants the cats or birds to buy more from them so that they'll have the funds necessary in order to take out the current point leaders. And rightly so. This is a terrible place to be in for the otters, though. I've generally seen that when they have to police, they lose because of it. Getting 4 funds as buys is not going to help you when you need to move 3 times, battle twice, and lose 3 warriors. Perhaps the most damaging things to occur to me on this turn is the birds crafting false orders and the coins, depriving me of 3 points I could have had on my next turn. That false orders is going to come back later. Perhaps seeing an opportunity to fly under the radar, the birds decide to play this turn very safely, not attacking me. But by playing it safely, they actually earn themselves an extra ambush and lose more warriors than they wanted to. Now, while the cats and otters are busy discussing how they're going to coordinate taking me down, I do happen to see several points worth of cat cardboard that is currently up for grabs if the otters do decide to turn coat. But at the same time, I'm thoroughly into my melodramatic speech, and no sense stopping now. With my next turn depending on keeping something on the board for me to actually score with, I really need these cats to roll badly, and everyone else at the table knows it. RNG, 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 yeah! All skill, baby. I live to convert another day. Now I will admit, I was surprised that the otters actually didn't go for all of that cardboard, and did keep up their word here. Making it to 17 points is nothing to sniffle at, and they certainly would have had the actions to at least slow down me at the same time, probably by taking out those rabbit gardens for another 2 points. They decide to start by committing to the birds, however, and this turns out to be a large mistake. Not only do they end up tying me for rule, which means they can't replenish themselves by putting down trade posts with the funds I had given them earlier, but they committed my funds first to move and then ended up in a situation where they couldn't actually use their remaining funds in a way that mattered. With the otter ball broken like this, I get a free turn to do pretty much whatever I like. Since I have 7 warriors to guard it, my fox garden is going to take probably about 4 or 5 attacks to actually clear out. With only 8 funds remaining and needing to recruit in order to even leave, the otters decide that odds are better up top. Unfortunately for the otters, their efforts at this point are kind of moot. Because I've managed to accumulate 7 acolytes and I have a hated rabbit outcast coming up, the loss of only 1 garden doesn't actually mitigate how much I can accomplish on the start of this turn. And I know just the place to spend all of it. Having wisely raised their price to 4, the otters have actually prevented me from scoring in rabbit on this turn, but I do have the fox card left. More importantly, of course, is that I'm going to be collecting 6 points worth of cardboard from this rabbit clearing, which along with scoring in fox is going to get me right to 29 points. I have an extra acolyte here, and it's certainly worthwhile to try and go for the keep. Any amount of hits over the first is going to get me a piece of cardboard, but unfortunately it seems the cats managed to redraw their fox ambush. So even though I have a commanding lead, I'm not actually able to close out the game. Aside from scoring, however, there's not much else I can do with this turn, so I set a couple of warriors into a mouse clearing just in case I need to crusade again. We draw 2 fox cards here, which means that even though I'm going to lose both of those rabbit gardens, I'm in a position to most likely avoid being unable to score on my next turn. But this is where that false orders I mentioned earlier comes into play. Because of it, the birds are able to take out my fox gardens, which means I'm not going to have any gardens whatsoever to score with on my next turn. Not only that, but I'll only have 1 card left after the cats move. Have the wages of my lifetime of sin finally come to call? Is this the turn of the tide for an eerie victory? Of course not. Eagle-eyed audience members will notice that I got 3 acolytes out of that exchange, and I'm in a position right now to just convert a building in any suit to win the game immediately. This is kind of the power of lizards in the endgame. When you have a lot of warriors protecting your buildings and you have a fast scoring pace, you're in a position to pay any of your losses forwards by using the acolytes you gain from battles to convert and sanctify your way to another foothold on the map, which makes you very difficult to dislodge. The otters, having resolved themselves to the rise of their new reptilian overlords, strive to end with as high a score as they can manage. A noble goal for the situation. As my last act, I symbolically destroy the cat workshop that I was amazed had survived this long. And that's a lizard game. I hope you all enjoyed watching this, and I hope it was at least informative, even though I may not be the strongest lizard player. Thank you all for watching, and be good to each other.